Guys, welcome back. We are doing Wit and Wisdom lesson 32, lesson 33, lesson 34, and lesson 35 together. So I'm going to share my screen with you and we will watch the video. There we go. Now I got it going.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Wit and Wisdom in Sync. My name is Tanisha Spears, and I'm excited to jump into our lesson for today. But before we do, let's make sure you have your materials ready. For this lesson, you will need handout 32A, which is the end of module story map. You'll need your Wit and Wisdom in Sync journal and a pencil. We will also be using assessment 32A, which is the end of module task, but I'll show that to you on the screen. Pause the video if you need to gather your materials. In previous work, you had an opportunity to examine works of art. Today, you will reflect on the new knowledge you've gained and the skills you've learned, meaning the things that you can do as a reader and a writer from reading the text in this module. But before you reflect, let's review the big question or the essential question that you've been building knowledge to answer throughout this whole module. And that question is, how do people respond to the powerful force of the wind? Now, the question that will frame our learning for today is, how do all Module 3 texts build my knowledge? Here are the texts we read this module. Brave Irene, Feel the Wind, Gilberto in the Wind, Owl at Home, and The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Which texts help you discover the most information about the powerful force of the wind? Point to it, but remember to point gently. Did you point? Okay, now you're going to take some time to think about the information and the skills that you've learned in Module 3. Now you're going to take some time to think about the information and the skills that you've learned in Module 3. You've seen this chart before. On the left-hand side of the chart is the side that's all about the new information that you've learned. And on the right-hand side is where you'll list the skills or the things that you can do as a reader or a writer. Let's take a moment and think about the books that we've read. Remember, we read a book that gave us information about the wind. We read 2 stories about a boy and a girl's adventures with the wind. We read a short story about an owl who has problems with the wind. And then we read a true story about a boy who harnessed the power of the wind to bring water and electricity to his village. Now I want you to think, what was the most important idea you learned from reading all the module texts? Think about what made it important. Think. Now share your ideas with your learning partner or just share aloud.
I think I learned that the wind was helpful in a lot of these situations, but it's very strong, powerful too, that it can damage things. We learned that in The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, that it was the wind that helped make the windmill move, that helped create the electricity that was needed in his country. But then in hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that, we know that they were very powerful sources of the wind that did damage to things. And Owl at Home, the wind came in because it was an unwanted visitor and it tore apart his home. It put snow everywhere, didn't it? And Gilberto, it was his friend, but it wasn't a very nice friend on certain days. In Brave Irene, the wind was very powerful. It was pushing and pulling Brave Irene all the way to the very end.
Okay, friends, now I want you to think about all the things you learned to do in this module. Remember, you've learned how to find answers to your questions you have about a text and how to use the outside-in strategy to figure out what a word means. You've learned to plan and write your own story, and you've learned how to add sensory and feelings words to make your writing more interesting. Now, what skill did you learn from this module that makes you the most proud and why? Share that skill with your learning partner or just share aloud.
I was going to say the skill I'm most proud of is using sensory and feeling words adding to my sentences. My sentences make a lot better sense adding those adjectives to it.
Okay, now what I'd like you to do is take a look at Assessment 32A, the end of module task that you see on your screen. We're going to look over this end of module assessment together. We'll go through the steps to do the task. And after this video, you'll know what to do. And your classroom teacher will tell you how to show your work and how to turn it into them. Listen as I read the prompt. Create a story about how a character responds to the powerful force of the wind on a windy day. Checklist for success. Be sure to include all of the following in your response. A story map to plan your story. Sensory and feelings words, including adjectives that describe what the wind was like and how the character felt at the beginning and end of the story. Words that show order of events. When you're finished, use the narrative writing checklist to review and revise your writing. Now, to plan your intermodule task, you need to first complete a story map, and that's what we're going to do now. What I'd like you to do is get out handout 32A, the end of module story map. It looks like what you see on your screen. Remember, if you don't have the handout, that's okay. You could also create the story map in your journals. Do you have your journal or your handout ready? Let's review the narrative elements on the story map. As I review them, I'd like you to point to the icon gently, either on your screen or you can just point on your handout. Are you ready?
Yes.
Characters, setting, problem, responses to the problem, resolution. We are going to go through the story map together so that you can have ideas for when you record your own stories on your story map. Okay, as we get ready for our story map, I want you to think, who could be the main character in your story? Think about that. Now, for my story, I think I'm going to use my son, Keith. So I'm going to write Keith as the main character in my story. It's your turn now. I'd like you to sketch and label your main character. Remember, only write a few words on the story map because you're going to write sentences when you write your final draft. Did you write your main character's name? Okay, let's move on. The setting. So my son Keith always talks about the woods. So I'm going to make my setting the woods. It's your turn to sketch and label your setting. Let's keep going. What could a problem be? I know. The problem is that the wind almost blew out his campfire. So I'm going to write the words blew out campfire as my problem. You know what to do now. Go ahead and sketch or write your problem. Okay, now, responses to the problem. I know. He responds to the problem that the wind almost blew out his campfire by putting sticks on the fire and putting big logs on the fire. So I'm going to add the word sticks and big logs to my story map. Now, you will see I added words to my story map. But again, you can put words and pictures, but you do not need to write sentences on your story map, okay? All right, go ahead and write words or sketch out the responses to the problem that's on your story map. Did you complete that part of your story map? Please be sure you do so because you will need it when you write. All right, let's keep going. What story element do you still need to plan?
Resolution.
Share with your learning partner or share aloud.
The resolution.
I'm sure you said it. You're going to need a resolution that tells how the problem is solved. So you are going to write a resolution. So what you are going to do is you are going to write a resolution on your story map or in your journal. And then you are going to check to see that your story map is complete. Are you ready? Pause the video to write your resolution and to make sure your entire story map is complete.
Okay, now my friends, this is where you choose your character and your setting and what the problem is. And whatever your problem is how the response should look also. So like if you had a problem of the wind blowing a candle out, then how would you fix that problem? What was your response to not letting the wind blow that problem out? Okay. Then you need to put a resolution in there. It's like, how was my problem fixed? What happened at the end of the story?
All right, friends. In addition to the story map that you just created, you have many other tools that you can use when writing your story. And I'm going to go over them now to refresh your memory. You have learned about words that writers use to put the events of a story in order. There are time order words, and you will see them on the time order words chart on the screen. I'm going to review those words briefly. Beginning, middle, end, first, next, last, then, finally. These are words that you can use in your stories to help the reader better understand the order of events in your story. Let's look at another tool that you have. This is the feelings anchor chart, and it lists some feelings words. And you should try to use words in your story to tell how your main character feels. I've included some of those words on this chart. I'm going to review them briefly. Upset, worried, frustrated, happy, relieved, proud. And finally, you have the sensory words anchor chart. You can also use sensory words in your story, and I have gathered some here for you. Follow along as I review some of the sensory words I've collected. Under the sense of sight, we have turn, sway, blur. Sense of hearing, we have whisper, laugh, whistle, sing, howl. And the sense of touch, we have gentle, jerk, strong, cold, and chilled. You're now going to use story maps that you just created to orally rehearse your stories. Remember all the resources that you have used while you're rehearsing your story, such as the time order words, the sensory words, and the feelings word anchor chart. All right, now that you know what you're going to write about, you'll practice saying your story out loud today. Remember, your classroom teacher will tell you where to complete your work when you're ready to. Pause the video to practice telling your story aloud.
Okay, now's the time to practice your story. Rehearse with somebody there that's beside you, okay? I know I can't wait to see these stories.
All right, awesome first graders. Did you rehearse your stories? If you didn't, I encourage you to go back and do it. It will help you with your writing. The next time we meet, we'll be starting a brand new module. So until then, be kind and do something great because you are capable of greatness.
Okay, yes. Now, I am going to stop sharing. All right, so you have everything that you are supposed to do right now to create this end of module task. So that means today you will create a story. You will create a story. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to show that screen one more time because I want you to see. I'm going to get rid of the video. And let's see here. This right here, the assessment, okay? Create a story about how a character responds to the powerful force of the wind on a windy day. So you get to create your own story on how a character responds to the powerful force of the wind on a windy day, okay? So that means you're going to choose a character. You're going to have to choose a setting and the problem. And how was this problem fixed? Okay, you've got to have all that in your story, but you've also got to add those feeling words and those sensory words to build your story. Okay, I don't want to see just one sentence, guys. This should be a story, several sentences. So this is for a grade because it's the end of module task. All right. Okay, so we'll stop again. All right, so let's see here. What else do we need to discuss here? That is it. But I need to make sure that you complete this writing portion, okay? You turn it into me. Take a picture of it and turn it in. Please make sure that you're using your capital letters, that you're using and you're using punctuation for these lessons, okay? All right, I cannot wait to read your stories. I'm so excited, okay? All right, guys, thanks for working so hard, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye, guys.